Hello again. Now that Norm has taken you through the majority of the standard applications for the OmniJig joinery system, I want to take you through an additional setup, the sliding tapered dovetail. I'm going to be using a 16-inch version of the OmniJig joinery system, which comes with many of the features you've already seen, but has a fixed finger and sliding tapered dovetail template as standard. This is a sandpaper rack that was built by one of my colleagues. As you can see, it has a sliding dovetail, which is a common joint for shelving. I'm going to show you how to make this in a minute by first showing you how to make the tenon, which is this horizontal piece, and then the sliding dovetail, which is the vertical piece. So let's make a joint. The jig has been set up with the stock loaded horizontally to support the template, and the template is oriented in the correct position to first cut the tenon on the left-hand side and the dado on the right-hand side. The OmniJig allows you to cut sliding tapered dovetails, where the taper makes it easier to assemble finished boards, and in particular, wide pieces. Referring to the onboard instruction labels, we choose the router bit, we choose the template stops, and finally the template guide, which is dictated by the depth of cut to be made. Starting with the tenon, mark the board before loading it into the OmniJig in the vertical position, making sure that the rear edge is on the left-hand side and aligning it with the top textured surface on the left-hand side also. If making multiple joints, bring the edge guide into the board to mirror this position for future cuts. The tenon is made in 2 passes. For the first pass, ensure that the spacer is attached to the bottom of the stop. Now we're ready to make our first cut. The first cut is made via the slot in the template, and we'll do a climb cut from left to right and then clear it out from right to left. Now we're ready to make the second pass, and to do this we need to remove the spacer from the front of the stop to be able to relocate the template accordingly. So I need to pull the template back from the stop, which allows me to remove the spacer. I'll position it on the back of the stop for safekeeping before pushing the templates back up against the stops and tightening down. You'll notice now that the front of the tenon board is visible underneath the template, and I'll be making a cut from right to left and then finishing off with a left to right cut. Here we go. Having cut the tenon board, it's now time to cut the dado board. Mark the rear edge of the dado and then orient it to the right side as you face it. Make a line across the board for the center of the dado that you wish to cut, and then measure up 1 5/8 of an inch, and again make another line for alignment purposes later. Now we're ready to mount the dado board into the OmniJig. Mounting it in the horizontal position and remembering to have the rear edge of the dado board aligned with the right side of the textured top. Before clamping the board down, it's important to ensure that the top line is even with the alignment lines of the fixed fingers. The bottom line should now be centered in the slot. It's important to use a straight bit to clear out the majority of the stock initially before making the last passes with the dovetail bit. Now we're ready to make the cut. Using the straight bits first, we're going from left to right first pass against the back edge of the slot, and then returning from right to left against the front edge of the slot. Having cleared out the material, I'll then revert to the dovetail bit that was used for the tenon board. Having marked the X on the left side of the dado, we're now ready for the moment of truth. Using the X to marry with the X of the tenon board, we'll now see how these fit. Fits like a glove. If your tenon is off center, you will need to adjust the stops at the back of the jig by loosening the lock nut and then moving the thread forward or backwards accordingly. If your joint is too tight or too loose, you will need to adjust the depth of the router bit. And following instructions on the label on the pod, you'll need to recut both boards.